Asterigos, another attempt at Souls-like from an indie developer. This makes me shudder instantly because of nuances required to make a great Souls game, and with added limitations of an indie studio, most we ever end up with is decent product with many missed key points on what makes Souls genre so special. Talking about 3D Souls attempts, not 2D. 2D games are far easier to make appealing and more polished, as there is plenty success there with Metroidvania and Souls mixes that work great. In 3D world we are starved for any competition to From Software, with some good attempts like Surge and Mortal Shell, of which none are indie. Indie would be Hellpoint, game that showcases why even with good ideas indie limitations are too detrimental to such 3D product. So far not one single 3D Souls-like coming from studios outside From Software hasn't been able to be at least decent in every aspect as a wholesome experience. By that I mean appealing and mechanically well-designed boss fights, balanced challenge, great and scary atmosphere, good story, appealing world, lore that means something, and fundamentally sound combat that offers enough diversity to keep you interested into playing again and again to enjoy different playstyles. Asterigos is also not decent at everything, but it is one incredibly well-made indie 3D Souls-like that deserves praise for being one of the best 3D non-From Software Souls-likes at the moment. First, let's start off with the only aspect where Asterigos doesn't do well and is unfortunately subpar, which is atmosphere. My opinion is that this graphical style, which is appealing, cannot produce ominous atmosphere that would bring out feelings of fear, excitement, progression, satisfaction and desperation. It is too lovely looking, for a lack of better explanation. And it looks really good, especially Hilda, main character. My point is that even though game looks good, vibrant graphical style just doesn't suit this genre very well in my opinion. It is like being attacked by pink, furry and cuddly xenomorph. Yes, it would eat my guts while I was trying to pet it, but I'd still go for petting first instead of attempting to defend myself. That is only weak part of this indie game, and I am a bit mind blown that it is the only one. Story and lore are quite good. Hilda is daughter of capable warrior and leader of some sort of a Viking clan that decide to go on a mission to lift the curse that has been plaguing ancient city and its inhabitants. I won't spoil anything, but game has plenty interesting characters and quite an interesting villain that becomes more interesting as time goes on and culminates with epic last boss fight. Story starts off nicely, but then kinda becomes less interesting fast when Minerva gives you 3 tasks. Thankfully, after those 3 tasks are done, it picks up again and doesn't dwindle anymore. As you're exploring the world, many lore bits and pieces will be found to encompass the story. A lot of them are irrelevant and serve no purpose, like notes connected to certain locations, but amidst many meaningless ones you'll find couple interesting too. Story presentation through echoes is not something I like, as it lacks enough significance to create emotional attachment to characters with growing mystery of Legion's task and Hilda's despair of trying to find father and his Legion as soon as possible. Unanimated objects, which essentially people are degraded to through echoes, do not have power of creating emotional connections. Thankfully, echoed characters are eventually met for real, so echoes at least big up a little bit eventual live confrontation that ends up being breath of fresh air. So story and lore is really good, even though presentation through echoes is lacking. Thankfully, it is only part of story presentation. Locations and world are here and there. City is divided by regions that Hilda explores one by one, and mostly all of these locations serve their purpose well of connecting many smaller areas through linear progression, while also unlocking newer ones later on. Plenty small things to explore and find with added side quests without any hand holding, so expect proper search. Items are hidden all over the place, but unfortunately Asterigos is another game that doesn't know how to reward exploration in most satisfying way, which would be through new weapons and armor. Unfortunately there is no armor system, and 6 weapons Hilda starts with are from start to finish. Don't get me wrong, there is plenty diversity in those 6 weapons, and you'll never be bored of them, but no armor system, and that great feeling upon finding a new weapon cannot be matched with rewards such as upgrade materials. Locations become more interesting as game progresses, with only 2 being badly made. First is definitely mine, and second one is depths that are continuation of the mine. Too many cheap depths and uninteresting sections at those 2 locations with difficult to find progression path. Quite frustrating. Then on the other hand, there is some kind of prison with fantastic backstory and immortal enemy patrolling that blows away. So locations are quite diverse and range from bad, of which are only 2, to typical average locations and some really good ones. Last location is also really appealing. Takes at least 30 hours to finish the game on hard, and that is without many side quests being finished. New Game Plus is unlocked, but honestly I don't see much in terms of replayability, because 6 weapons are just enough for one playthrough, and I don't honestly know if couple decisions that are made in the game make that much of a difference for one more playthrough to be done. Now let's go on to combat. At first Asterigos blew me away how good and fundamentally sound combat is. Combat animations are really well done when it comes to attack and defense, and game is very responsive with full control over the character given to the player. Good enough enemy diversity as well, with each enemy having couple different attack patterns, so combat never becomes dull due to 6 weapons with 2 being equipped at the same time with interchangeable attacks. Now that is something I have rarely seen done so well. Any 2 weapons can be strung into combos together seamlessly. At one hand, I am not a fan of warriors switching weapons so fast on the fly in combat due to realism constraints. I know this is a game, don't worry. But when it is done so well, there is no way it would be counted against the game. Brilliant work. Even basic sword and shield attacks felt so good at the beginning. Weapons are very diverse and have almost no similarities, with magic bracelets being one of the best weapons I have ever wielded in games. Such unique concept. Granted, maybe you have seen such a weapon somewhere else, but I haven't, so it is unique to me. Now here is where we come to a bit of a problem when it comes to indie Souls-likes and their combat shortcomings that even From Software struggles at times with. Clunkiness and movements. Not attack animations, but movements. Animation and effects wise you can't ask for much more than Asterigos. Clunkiness and movements you could though. There is certain lack of impact at times to normal attacks, as enemies and Hilda frequently react like nothing happened upon getting hit. Simple poise system is in the game with interrupts and knockdowns, and I like it, but outside of that, lack of impact is obvious. Bigger problem are movements that seem disconnected from the ground and add significantly to clunky feeling, which becomes quite bothersome as soon as faster and shorter dodge is unlocked. As soon as player gets used to animations and combat, cracks are gonna become more obvious. Enemy movements have too much sliding at times with lack of proper and more realistic distance covering, and Hilda's short dodge makes her look like a clunky rabbit at times disconnected from the ground she is jumping on. This is why weight in games like these is such an important and difficult feat to accomplish to add that realism and balanced challenge. Game is also missing stealth and plunging attacks. Short finishing moves and special moves while enemies are knocked down would be nice as well. AI is also problematic. Sometimes enemies don't know what to do and act passively. Enemy placement is not the greatest either. Ranged enemies should be sporadically used in melee-focused games, but instead they have opted for Nioh 2 approach of putting frequent ranged enemies far from crux of combat, usually on elevated positions, and even though that is how military strategy should be applied, in games it only leads to annoyance. Problematic ranged enemies are also connected to very obvious disbalance through the game. At first game is too easy, then suddenly enemies at few locations in second half of the game do so much damage in one hit it is ridiculous. Damage distribution is important factor in any game that is trying to create challenging environment, but in Asterigos is all over the place. Thankfully, with few parameter tweaks, it can be easily fixed. Bosses have similar balancing issues. Couple boss fights are really good, but then there is one ridiculously hard with too many mob spawns, with rest of the bosses being too easy. I think last fight is where the game should aim to be in terms of boss difficulty, but I won't spoil it here with footage. Character progression is mostly tied to weapon skill tree that has plenty altering upgrades and special abilities for each weapon. Special abilities are interesting and well done for the most part, but there is also obvious disbalance between them due to better and more effective choices. Final upgrades give full invulnerability, which helps a lot in tough fights, but they also cost 4 upgrade points. To me, more interesting than special abilities are weapon techniques. Each weapon has designated technique. Daggers better dodge, sword and shield block, hammer powerful spin, staff ranged aim attack, spear parry, and magical bracelets lay down traps. With 2 weapons equipped at the same time, player has always access to 2 techniques, which adds to combat diversity. One thing I can't stand in modern action RPGs is replacement of attribute system with horrible and shallow character upgrades through 3 stats that in overly simplistic manner affect health, stamina and magic. Here it is kinda the same, but instead of stamina there is a tech attribute that raises base damage for all weapons. I don't see purpose in such upgrade system, if we can call it a system even, as it offers no deeper depiction of a character but gives linear character progression with minimal player input, and that goes against everything role-playing. Now for a short rant. It baffles me why devs decide in Souls games without online component to put save points in areas far from boss fights, so we have to travel every time we die past the same fucking enemies no one ever fights twice, but just runs past, because our only goal is to get to the goddamn boss. Why? It adds nothing but annoyance and wasting of precious time that could be spent on actually progressing the game. You know, the actual goal. Asterigos doubles down on lack of quality of life in this instance, because storage items do not automatically replenish upon respawning back, so to replenish potions, player needs to teleport back to shelter to access storage or merchant, and then teleport back to the original location. Thankfully it is also easily fixed annoyance, which I hope they do. Graphically game looks good, especially Hilda and some other characters. Enemies look decent for the most part, but some locations appear barren and bland with same textures copied pasted everywhere. Overall though, I am happy with what they did, even though, as mentioned earlier, this graphical style isn't the best choice for Souls-likes, as they rely a lot on atmosphere of dread and despair to further that feeling of helplessness. Granted, they might have went for it on purpose to avoid such atmosphere, but haven't gained anything from it. Audio work is good on all fronts, with nothing standing out as amazing. Voiceover is surprisingly good though for an indie. Honestly, this whole game is surprisingly good for an indie Souls-like, and I have to give it a little bit of leeway when it comes to final score despite its shortcomings, because quality is it has far surpassed problems of which most are fixable. Acme Studios did a wonderful job with such limited resources that is even mind-blowing at times. They took one of the hardest genres to master with so many potential nuanced pitfalls and went balls deep by choosing 3D world, and it is astonishing they have succeeded so well. Outside from Software games you won't find many better wholesome 3D Souls-likes than Asterigos. Would be interesting to see what they could do with higher budget and with more experience under the belt, because with better combat polish, better balancing, little more detailed locations and some other stuff done slightly better, Asterigos would be easily 8 out of 10, which would mean great game. I don't see it reaching that high score because it would require a lot of changes and improvements, but 7 out of 10 for a good game like this is a no-brainer. Thank you for watching, you ancient bastards, and check out Patreon and subscribe, our links in the description if you want to help the channel further.